Hi, welcome to another episode of How to Survive Healthcare. My name is Kayla Thompson-Riviere, registered nurse and independent patient advocate, and I will be your host of the show. As always, nothing in this show should be taken as a substitute for medical advice. The purpose of the show is to inform and entertain. Always seek out a medical professional for any medical questions. So today I want to talk to you about how to support your long distance loved ones. This can be very challenging in all ways, but especially in healthcare. It's something that's very near and dear to me that I'm going through with my own family right now. So I just wanted to share some of the insights I have to make it a little bit easier. So whenever we have a long distance loved one that we can't be there with, the goal is that although they're alone, we don't want them to feel lonely. So in general, we want to try to encourage connection through technology as much as we can. I know, especially with our older population, that can be a little bit challenging. But if you have someone around them who can help you get them set up with like a video messaging service, and then you can call them and they just have to know how to kind of swipe up and answer. Oftentimes that is the easiest solution for everybody. Of course, video calls are the closest thing we have to actually being there. And it can make a huge difference for somebody who's alone, either at home or during a hospital stay. Another thing is, particularly if you are this person's medical power of attorney or help them with medical decision making, you have to have a hold of their records. You can work with them to get logged into their portals, but as you may have found, different health systems utilize different portals. So a suggestion I have for that is to use the MyLinks website. That's MyLinks.com. So it actually integrates with all the, not every, but most health portals across the nation, and it's sort of a backdoor into their system. So not only does it allow you to see health records from different hospital systems, but also sometimes you can see results faster than you can from that actual individual hospital system because of the way that it works. So this can be really helpful in managing and staying on top of your loved one's care. If you're their medical power of attorney, the medical staff has an obligation to speak with you about that patient's medical condition. But if you're not, and you still want to be able to receive some information, it's a good idea to, ahead of time, of course, with the patient's permission, get a HIPAA form filled out that you can then send to the hospital. I will link down below a kind of a general one that you can also find one online through a Google search. If you know the health facilities that your loved one is going to frequent most often, it may make sense to reach out to those facilities as well. Some facilities will only accept their own HIPAA form and not just a generic one that you can find online. So getting all of that in place prior to medical appointments or hospitalizations will make that whole process much more smooth. Again, I've talked about this in previous episodes, but if your loved one hasn't filled out advance directives yet, now that we're talking about it, it's a great time to talk about that with them. We want to know who their medical decision maker is and the kind of care that they would want to receive in the event that they can't speak for themselves. Bear with me with this breathiness, guys. I am very pregnant. And I'm hopeful in a couple of weeks you won't have to hear me panting anymore. But for now, here we are. Okay. So the next parts, I just want to kind of break up some of the differences between tackling doctor's appointments and approaching hospital stays. So when your loved one is preparing for a doctor's appointment. Again, particularly if you are the medical power of attorney or the one that helps them make medical decisions, you always want to try as much as possible to attend that doctor's appointment, virtually, of course. The easiest thing is to be able to attend that appointment through a video chat on your family member's phone. But if that's beyond their capabilities, reach out and coordinate with the office and see if there's an option for you to do it with their equipment. Now, don't be surprised if you get some pushback. And this is simply because I think we all know at this point, doctors' offices are pretty overwhelmed. You go show up for an appointment, and how often is the doctor running late? And then by the time they get in there, they're rushing through your appointment. So they tend not to be super inclined to try to accommodate even more requests. Some things that I have found useful to help alleviate that stress on them is to give them some of the reasons why it's actually in their benefit for you to be attending this appointment. So for instance, when the family member is attending the appointment virtually, it tends to make for a more efficient appointment for that doctor because you can come prepared with your questions and be taking notes while your loved one, the patient, is able to just sit there and soak in the information. Not only that, but with your good note taking and now having two sets of ears listening to that conversation, it's going to be a lot less likely that patient is going to have more questions that they're going to have to call back with. And most importantly, when you're there to take notes and listen to the conversation, you can actually help to make sure that your loved one understands and is then compliant with the medical regimen moving forward. So I find that explaining all of these things to the staff ahead of time, they tend to be a lot more accommodating because then, you're really seeing more of a help for the team instead of just an extra thing to do. And then, of course, prior to that appointment, have a discussion with your loved one. Make sure you understand why they have that appointment, what concerns they want to make sure get addressed, and have those notes ready to go for the appointment. Now, moving on to hospital stays. Of course, hospital stays do tend to be a little bit more unexpected than doctor's appointments. So we don't have quite as much room to prepare just before. You really need to have preparations in place so you're ready to go at any time. So again, having the medical power of attorney and HIPAA forms in hand, ready to go at any time. I also would recommend that you have the patients, all of their providers and their history, their medications, and their baseline functioning status all together on one page. If you have not yet downloaded My Health Hub, that is exactly what it provides. And I would suggest that you go to our website, heardforlife.com/health hub, and download that today. I'll link that in the comments as well. That'll gather all of that medical information nicely on one page so that they have something that's easy to present to the hospital to make sure everybody's up to speed with their care. When your loved one does get into the hospital, you want to make sure that you're calling daily to check in on them. Typically, the best time to call is between 2 to 5 p.m. That is often when your nurse is going to have, if they're going to have time, tends to be the best window of time. However, that can vary. So when your loved one does get admitted, ask the nursing staff if there is a time frame that tends to work better for them. When you do talk with them, let them know that you'll be calling tomorrow and that you're going to call every day to check in on them. Sadly, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I will tell you from working at the bedside that when we know that there's family that's very involved in a patient, the patient does tend to get a little bit more care and attention than somebody who nobody is checking up on them. It's another one of those things in healthcare that I wish it wasn't that way and it isn't fair, but here's the reality we live in. So now you know. When you do call, make sure you're asking about their test results, if there's been any changes to their medications or vital signs, kind of their general progress. Are things getting better or are they getting worse? In most hospitals, they will also do interdisciplinary rounds on patients. So what that means is the social workers, pharmacy, the nurses, and then depending on where the patient is located, sometimes some of the physicians will all sit down at one time every day or a couple days a week, again, depending on where the patient is, and discuss kind of head to toe what's going on with that patient, what needs to be addressed, and where we go from here. So ask about how rounds went, what was discussed, and if there's been a change in the patient's plan of care. And then lastly, make sure you're asking about their spirits. How are they doing? Do they seem to be having a good day? Are they feeling down? What do they seem to be struggling with? Again, like we talked about at the top of the video, employing that video chat is going to be the big source of connection for that patient. It's hard being alone at home, but it's even more difficult to be alone in a hospital. So encouraging that connection as much as possible is going to make a big role, not only in how they feel, but their overall recovery. When you do speak with the nurses, always note that how much you appreciate their time. This kind of goes back to the saying, it's easier to catch flies with honey than vinegar. And your nursing staff is, again, going to be more involved with the patient and happier to talk with you, of course, if they're getting treated with respect and appreciation. On that note, you really should designate one or at max 2 people that are going to be calling to check in on the patient, and then plan out a phone tree within your family or friends to be able to relay out that information. If you have a large family, you don't want everybody in the family calling to check in with the nurse, because of course that's very overwhelming, first of all. But more importantly, if everybody is calling, if you got 9 or 10 family members calling for a 5-minute update, even if the nurse could talk at every time, that's taking an hour almost away from that nurse's ability to be providing patient care, not only for your loved one, but of course the other people that they have to take care of as well. So keeping that in mind and being respectful to time, designate that one person and let them distribute information through the family. So those are my top tips for managing a long distance loved one, medically speaking. I hope that this was helpful for you. As always, if there's a topic that you would like to learn more about, please reach out either at the website heardforlife.com or on Facebook or Instagram. Thank you so much. Take care.